Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a highly technical interview guide and decoding it into a master SAP architecture blueprint, one you'll actually be able to remember when the pressure is on. Seriously, if you've ever stared at a massive list of SAP T-codes and felt like you were just reading the Matrix, you are in the exact right place. We're turning those dense textbook definitions into a logical visual structure, building your knowledge from the ground up, literally like an architect putting up a skyscraper. All right, so our main source material for this explainer is the 2026 Integrated Guide for SAP ECC6 and S/4HANA, put together by FICO consultant Shard Mishra. We're taking this incredibly comprehensive volume and breaking it all down. We're talking dense configuration definitions, module-wise explanations, and yeah, those ever-important T-codes. The whole point here isn't just to memorize a list, it's to actually understand how all these pieces interlock in the real world. That is how you're going to absolutely nail a consultant-level interview. So our blueprint today has three distinct phases. First up, the enterprise structure. Second, we'll hit global settings. And third, general ledger configuration. Let's jump right in. Section 1, enterprise structure, building the foundation. If you walk into an SAP FICO interview, I can almost guarantee they're going to test your understanding of SAP's highest organizational levels right out of the gate. It's a total classic trap. Why? Because in everyday business lingo, company and company code basically mean the exact same thing. But in SAP, they are entirely different beasts. So what is the exact difference between a company and a company code, and which T-codes actually define them? We'll notice how cleanly SAP separates the macro from the micro here. A company, which you configure using T-code OX15, is literally the absolute highest organizational unit in the system. Its primary job? Consolidation. It's used for centralized financial reporting across a bunch of different entities. On the flip side, the company code, configured via OX02, is the smallest self-contained accounting unit. This is the level where you actually draw up your complete set of accounts for legal financial reporting. So just think of the company as the giant global holding corporation and the company code as the localized, legally registered branch. Now, once you've got your legal entities nailed down, the interviewer will probably pivot and ask, okay, so how does SAP handle internal or segment-wise reporting? Well, for internal reporting, we split things up cleanly into two main categories. First up, we've got business areas, defined by T-code OX03. These represent separate operations or product lines within a business, which is absolutely perfect for segment-wise accounting. Second, we have functional areas using OKBD. These categorize your expenses by their actual function, so think administration, sales, or production. This separation is absolutely crucial when you get into cost of sales accounting and really need to dig into your expense analysis. To finish pouring our foundation, we've got to talk about risk. A huge piece of the enterprise structure is the credit control area, defined by T-code OB45. It does exactly what it sounds like, managing and monitoring customer credit limits right within accounts receivable to bring down your overall credit risk. But, and here's the critical consultant-level insight, it doesn't just float around in cyberspace. Once you define it, you have to link it to the relevant organization by assigning that credit control area to the company code using T-code OB38. That right there is how you ensure integrated accounting and really tight credit management. Moving on to Section 2, Global Settings, the Rules of the Road. Imagine a house where every single light switch does something completely different every time you press it. Total chaos, right? Well, in SAP, to control exactly what users see and enter during transactions, we use a field status variant. Configured using T-code OBC4, this brilliant little tool controls field behavior during document entry. It essentially dictates whether a field is optional, required, suppressed entirely, or just set to display only. This makes sure users are only entering data into the necessary fields for specific transactions, which keeps your database flawlessly clean. And remember, just like the credit control area, this variant must be assigned to the company code, this time via T-code OBC5, to actually take effect. All right, so we've controlled what data gets entered. Next, we need to understand the timing of these entries. That brings us to another really crucial interview question. How exactly do posting period variants control your financial postings? This perfectly illustrates the rigid, super logical flow of SAP. Posting period variants manage financial posting control through a very strict three-step chronological process. Step 1, you define the variant itself using T-code OBBO. Step 2, you assign that newly created variant to your specific company code using OBBP. And finally, Step 3, the ongoing operational step where you actually open and close the periods using T-code OB52. This controls posting authorization by account types, making sure your accounting team is only ever making transactions in valid, open financial windows. Now, what about the actual cash being moved around? We obviously can't just have anyone posting a billion-dollar transaction willy-nilly. We need to govern the finances by establishing tolerance groups for employees. And that brings us to a highly significant T code, OBA4. The crucial takeaway here is that OBA4 acts as your company's financial safeguard. This configuration sets the absolute upper financial limits for your employees and users. It dictates the maximum document amounts they're allowed to post, the specific cash discount percentages they're authorized to grant, and even the acceptable payment differences they're allowed to clear. So if an interviewer asks you about OBA4, what they're really asking is, do you know how to protect the company's vault? All right, let's head into Section 3, General Ledger Configuration, the engine room. Interviewers absolutely love testing your patience and your respect for system prerequisites. They will almost always ask for the exact sequence of events required before you can even think about creating your GL master accounts. You can't just jump in and start making accounts out of thin air. You have to set the stage first. Before those master accounts can exist, you've got to execute these 3 structural steps in exact order. First, T-code OB13, edit the chart of accounts list. This is where you maintain this central structure, defining things like account number length and the language. Second, T-code OB62, assign your company code to that chart of accounts. This links your operational chart right to your legal entity. And remember, a company code can only use one operational chart. Finally, step 3, T-code OBD4, define the account group. This is where you set the number ranges and field statuses specifically for those GL accounts. Once you've got that structure in place, there's one very specific account you absolutely must configure before you can do anything else, the retained earnings account, using T-code OB53. Why is it mandatory? Well, at the end of the fiscal year, SAP needs a destination for your profit and loss balances to automatically carry forward into. OB53 defines that exact GL account destination, and you assign it based on the chart of accounts you just created. Let's see how this all builds up to the final action when it comes to finally creating the GL account itself. A senior interviewer is going to want to know if you actually understand efficiency. They'll likely ask you to compare creating a GL account centrally versus using other, more disparate step-by-step methods. Creating it centrally using T-code FS00 is honestly the ultimate tool for a consultant. Instead of jumping between a bunch of different screens to set up the high-level details and then the localized details, FS00 lets you maintain both the overarching chart of accounts data and the specific company code data simultaneously. All of it right there in one single master record management screen. It saves a ton of time, reduces manual errors, and immediately shows the interviewer you know how to operate efficiently within the system. And there you have it. You've now mastered the architectural flow of SAP FICO. From defining the widest enterprise boundaries to locking down global settings, all the way to configuring the general ledger engine room. You aren't just memorizing random T codes anymore. You are armed with the actual blueprint to dominate your interview by explaining exactly why the system is built this way. So my final question to leave you with today, now that you hold the keys to this architecture, what is the very first thing you're going to configure when you sit down at that terminal? Think about it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.